We ask in Jesus' precious, precious name. Amen.
Amen.
I have no idea what's going on today. I started crying as soon as I left my house this morning. It might be because my wife's sick, but I haven't been able to stop crying since. So I'm either having a nervous breakdown, which probably isn't the case because I feel pretty good on the inside. I feel pretty solid at the moment. Or God is really doing something in our midst, and that kind of gets me a little bit excited. You know, you can faithfully serve God for a long period of time and not really sense too much. You've probably been there at times, right? But then there are seasons, then there are shifts, then there are changes that God brings into our lives. And at that point in time, it is just so, so precious to be walking with Him. So I feel that God has got something for us this morning, and I want you to listen not just with your ears, but also with your heart today. Because who knows? I'm just an earthly vessel. I've got, when I speak this morning, when I share with you what I believe God is wanting you to grab a hold of, those words just create a little bit of space. They might create a picture, an image in your head. But this morning, what we are desperately needing to have happen is we desperately need to have an encounter with Jesus, an encounter with the Holy Spirit, an encounter with the Father. And that's what I've been praying for every single one of you, that you would have today, that you would really sense God speaking to you. We're going to be talking about our church. We're taking a little bit of a detour from the current series. Well, actually, it's not a detour. It's an object lesson for our current series, but we're taking a little bit of a sidestep to the direction that we've been going over these last months. And I really believe that God is wanting to speak to us. We're going to be talking about the future. We're going to be talking about what God has done in the past. We're going to be talking about what God is currently doing at the present. But this isn't just about our church. It's about you and what God is wanting to do in your life and in your heart and in your future. So I want you just to open your heart as much as you possibly can. Now, we're obviously with a bit of a delay at the beginning. We're running out of time. But what I'd ask you to do this morning is just give me a little bit of grace. I'm going to get through this as quickly as I possibly can. And then we're going to have a moment at the end where we're going to stand before Jesus. I'm going to allow God to speak to all of our hearts. The reason why I've got two iPads is because I've got some notes on one and I've got a slideshow on the other. Now, where are my notes gone? Exciting. Now, as a church, you can see on the first slide there, it's got a picture of the Grace Centre, and it says underneath that the thing that says that our gift to our community, 8 years of grace. Well, we're actually past the 8-year mark. We're now into our 9th year. So it's about 8.5, but I like round numbers, so I just left it at 8. 8 years of grace. Our community has experienced 8 years of grace. Grace Church, the grace of God, the grace on your lives. Our community has experienced that over the last 8.5 years. And some extraordinary things have taken place during that time. When we moved here to Rugby, I was on a beach just north of Bicheno at the start of that year. We bought the property. We had a number of meetings. Remember those? We had six Sundays where we met at the old pub. Nothing had been done to it. We were just meeting in the pub because we didn't want to be paying the current $500 a week that we were paying to Citywide at that particular point in time to have services. We thought we could save a bit of our money, so we moved into the old pub. We crammed in there. It was stinky, it was smelly, it was hot, but we were on the move finally after 5.5 years of a wilderness experience for us as a church, which I might say was the making of us in more ways than one. But we just moved in there. We've been holding a few services before this auditorium. At that time it was being constructed. So we had 6 weeks at the Grace Centre, and I'd gone away with the family up to Bicheno, as we often did around summertime, and I was walking along the beach north of Bicheno, near the Denison River there. And as I was walking along, I felt the Holy Spirit speak to me about our church. And I shared it with our church after I came back from that time away. And it was a passage of scripture taken from Revelation chapter 3, verses 7 and 8. And I felt God was speaking to me about the new season that we were about to enter into here in our church. And this is what Revelation 3, verses 7 and 8 says, "To the angel of the church in Philadelphia write, these are the words of him who is holy and true, who holds the key of David. What he opens, no one can shut, and what he shuts, no one can open. I know your deeds. See, I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut. I know that you have little strength, yet you have kept my word and have not denied my name." Now, we just moved into Rugby at that point in time. We bought the old Village Green Tavern, and what a dumb move at the time. I'm kind of like, when I think back to what it was like when we first moved into it, it was obviously God, because in the natural, you'd be mad to purchase a building that was in such disrepair as the building that we purchased. And it had come at the end of, as I said, 5.5 years of basically wandering in the wilderness. We crossed the river at the height of our church growth phase, and with the intention of buying land down near Cambridge and building an auditorium down there, having a great big centre, conference centre, etc. We had the dream, we had the will, we crossed the river on a high, and then we hit a whole heap of roadblocks along the way. Who knows that in life, when you hit a roadblock, it isn't necessarily the devil.
Yeah, that's right.
Quite oftentimes it's God. Why? Because he loves you. He wants to change you. He wants to work on your heart. And it's as we go through the difficult things in life with Jesus that something shifts, something changes on the inside. I have not seen too much change in my life from going through good stuff, because you just keep doing what you're doing because it's good. The majority of change that I've seen happen in my life has been when I've had to be faithful to God in the tough stuff.
Yeah.
And right at the start, when we moved into, when we bought the old building, moved into this place, I preached a series of messages, and some of you who were here at that time might remember them, all around a statement, which I stole from someone else, I have to confess. Right? It wasn't something that I came up with. I saw it, it spoke to me, and I preached an entire series around it. Remember that little statement? Start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. And for us, that really epitomised the pioneering heart that we had at that time. We had very little. We'd spent all our money purchasing this rundown, smelly old building. We'd moved into a new venue. We were kind of a little bit, I think, at that time, a little bit shell-shocked from the 5.5 years that we just experienced. It was like a door was beginning to crack open for us, and we're kind of like, okay, we're ready to go, but we really don't have all that much to go with. And so that little statement, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can, became a real word from God to us. And that has really epitomised our entire journey up until this point in time. And I want to this morning take you through that journey and show you a miracle that has happened before your eyes that maybe you haven't fully appreciated. Because when we bought that whole building, people come up to me and they say to me, Dermot, what are you going to do with the building? And I would say to them, and maybe I said it to a few of you here as well, people say, what's going to happen here? And I would say to them all the time, listen, come back in 5 to 10 years' time and I'll let you know. Because at the moment I haven't got a clue. All I know is God has planted us in an incredibly needy community. He had a spare church sitting over here in the wings, and he thought, where in this city do I need to plant a church of great-hearted people, a church of people that really love me, a church that tries to be as authentic as it possibly can. Where can I plant that church? And God decided to plant us in the middle of a social housing estate. Now, we wouldn't have chosen that when we were sitting over in the city, but after 5.5 years of floating in the breeze, we were ready to go wherever God wanted to send us. And he sent us here. At the same time that we bought that building, Emmanuel, as many of you would know, came to us and said, look, we're building a performing arts centre, would you like to have church there? And we said, that's fantastic, yes, let's do that. That was part of God's plan for us, because the fact that we can have church here meant that we were able to look at the property that we bought and do something that not too many other people, not too many other churches have done, not just in our state, but in our country. We were able to invest all of the money that we had saved up over the years of faithful graces giving towards our church. We were able to invest all of that into a property that wasn't going to serve our needs, but was going to serve the needs of others. This is what it looked like when we first moved in. Maybe some of you remember. It was an absolute dump. In fact, I remember thinking during the first months that we were there, they should have burnt this place to the ground and started from scratch. Do you know we lost people from our church during that first year? We lost people who were qualified builders and electricians who left our church because when they saw this, they thought, I'm a bit concerned that my name could get attached to this dump of a building and it could come back to bite me on the butt. We lost people from our church because of this building. But we had inside us this idea that that building could become an object lesson to our community and to us as a church. And you'll notice on the slide behind me it says, a hope greater than our past. We bought that building in November 2015. A building that had been used by our local community for over 40 years as a, I was going to say a den of iniquity, but as a pub. And that building was built in Rugby as a demountable building, and the thinking behind it was if they weren't able to make money in Rugby, Housing Commission area, they would tear it down and rebuild it in Bridgewater, another social housing community. So in their minds they thought the best place to make money is in a place where people can't afford to be spending whatever money they have on grog. And there's been a lot of people who have gone through that building over that 40 years of its life. And we've had some really interesting conversations with people who have been to that building in the past and then ended up coming to that building for other reasons that I'll get into this morning. But the idea was that that building would become an object lesson, something that people could see. And as it improved, as it got better, as it became a place that was there to serve the community rather than to take from the community, that somehow, some way, people would begin to realise that there is a God who loves them. And a God who's willing to lay down everything for them. A God who's willing to lay down his life for them. Words are cheap. Actions speak far, far louder than words. We can tell the world that we love them, but until the world sees that love in action, it's just words. We're just like politicians sometimes. We get up there and we make all these promises, but if they don't actually see it, they don't actually experience it, how will they know? And so we set off and we decided, okay, we're going to fix this place up. That was the back room. That was the first room that we decided we would try and fix. And we had about $15,000 saved up in the bank at this point in time. And we decided, okay, let's get stuck into this. Let's see what we can do. And in February 2016, we put on 2 young guys who were looking to get some work experience. It was through a program that the government ran to give people work experience so that they could get a reference. And we put on 2 young guys who got stuck into some of the demolition work that we had to do at the centre. So at the back there, so you saw the other picture. This is the old room. There was a bar that ran all the way through. There was a whole stack of stuff. And we just got them over the next 12 weeks to tear a whole heap of stuff out of the property. At the same time, we had a whole heap of working bees in that back room. Because that back room smelt like nothing on earth. 40 years worth of beer in the carpet. We did clean the carpets. They looked good for about a day, and then the stuff started to come back through it again. But we got stuck into it because we decided, okay, we need to do something here. We had about, as I said, we had about $15,000 in the bank, and we stripped that back room out because already the local community was using the facility. And our heart was to create a space, a place where our community could gather. A place that would tell them that they were worth something. And so we were already having community meetings. One community together, a group of organisations and community members that had started up the year before we moved in our local community. Our place became a favourite gathering place because most of them had been there when it was the pub. So they felt quite comfortable coming to the place, but it was just absolutely atrocious. So we decided that we were going to fix up the back room. And we got stuck into it. We had a whole bunch of working bees there. Stripped it all out. Built a bit of a room for our chairs and stuff. And then we ended up just lining all of the walls, and because we had a plan. So the issue was, this is what it looked like in June 2017, and we wanted to have it ready for a Building Stronger Communities Together workshop that we had said we would host in July. And by the time July hit, we were ready. This was the setup of the room for the Building Stronger Communities workshop in July 2017, and we were really thrilled that we were able to actually pull it all off. Since then, that room has been used for a whole heap of training activities. It was used as a vaccination clinic during the COVID outbreak. We've had a whole stack of community consultations that have been held there. This is just a couple of the things that have gone on in that space. We've opened it up and we've given it to our community for free because we wanted to show them that we cared about them. And when a church cares for its community, do you know what it tells the community? It tells the community that God cares for them as well. When you care for your neighbour, it tells them that God cares for them as well. Because you're a follower of Jesus. And what is it that gets us up in the morning? What is it that gets us out of our comfort zone? It's the relationship we have with Jesus. It's the love that He shed abroad in our hearts that we want to share with other people. And when we love other people, they get to experience and road test the love of God for themselves. The next project that we start, so we had $15,000, we spent it all. We were given a lot of donations during that time. Actually, the painting of that room, it was painted by a local painter who saw what we were doing, said, I'll paint the whole thing out, not a problem. He actually then went on and painted out this next project for us as well. But the next thing we decided to work on was the front bar area. So this was the front bar area at the Grace Centre. A lot of stories could be told about that bar area, not all of them all that crash hot. A lot of misery came out of that place. But we decided that would be our next project. Now, I am not a builder. Fortunately, in our church, we have people that are experienced builders, but I'm not a builder. But I thought at the time, we want to put in some offices. We thought we'd build some community offices. And I thought at the time, that'd be a piece of cake. All you got to do is throw up a few walls, put a bit of plasterboard on and paint the thing, and put a few holes in for doors. I thought, how expensive can that be? And so I just simply went ahead and bought some timber for framing up of the walls. And then we went to a local builder, a pastor friend of mine, and he started the process of building. But just so that you understand what it was like working out of this place, some of you have seen this picture. That was our first Grace Church office. That's where we actually used to have our office space, and it was totally open to the back area. And during winter, it was absolutely freezing in there. Emmy, who used to work in our office for us, she sat at her desk with one of those upright heater things. What do they call them? Panel heaters. She would sit at her desk with the panel heater between her legs to fend off hypothermia. It was that cold. It was a horrible place to work in, but that's what we did for the first few years that we were in there. But in 2018, March of 2018, we decided, okay, let's go and build it. And I'm thinking, we've got a little bit of money in the bank, let's just do it. And at the time I thought, well, we need to go to the church and ask the church for some help. to raise some extra funds to, purchase insulation, door frames, doors, and all that sort of stuff. So I thought, I can believe for $5,000. I'm going to come to the church for $5,000 because we don't want to be one of those churches that are constantly whacking people over the head for money. But I thought, as a church, we could raise $5,000. Now, for some of you who've been part of larger churches or have been a Christian for a while, you might think that raising money is easy. You might be one of those people that says, I just trust God, it'll be okay. Question, have you ever tried to raise money outside of your job from the goodwill of others? It ain't as easy as you think it is. Stories are great when you go to conferences and hear these great stories and go, wow, God was so good. But when you're on the other end and you're trying to raise money from people, it's actually quite challenging. So I was sitting at home thinking, $5,000, when you raise $5,000, it'll help us build this thing. And I felt convicted. And I felt God was saying, $5,000 is too little. So I doubled it to 10. And I thought, wow, that's going to be a stretch, God, but I'll do that. And then that very next Sunday, I get to church and I say to the church, said to you guys, I said, listen, we're going to put in this office space and we want to have community groups using the offices. But we have to raise some money. And I did my big spiel, and at the end of it, I confessed, I said I wanted to raise $5,000, but I felt really pathetic in my faith. So I doubled it to $10,000, and Deb was sitting on the front row, and she's looking at me, and she's trying to get my attention. I'm thinking, have I gone over already? And I'm looking at her, and she's making these faces at me. And then finally she gets up and walks out to me. I'm thinking, oh, this is so embarrassing. My wife is actually walking out from the front to tell me that I need to close the service and finish it all up. And she whispers in my ear, and said, Dermot, we just had $20,000 put in the offering for the building. And here I am going, I had faith for $5. I'm going to go for 10. And then she comes up and says, somebody just put in $20,000 in offering. That has never happened to us or for us before. And so I kind of then turned around to the church, you guys, and you might remember it if you were here on that day. Yeah. I said, you know how I was going to 5,000 to 10? Well, we've just actually been given 20,000. So I will now go away and work out exactly how much we do need. And that's when I freaked out, because at the end of the day, it cost us $75,000 to build these offices. Well, anyway, the story doesn't end there. That very next week, I get a phone call from a family trust here in Hobart, and they said, listen, we think what you're doing at the Grace Centre is fantastic. How would you like $25,000 towards the building of your office space? So in within 1 week, we just raised $45,000. Remember, I was trying to raise 10. We already raised $45,000. The next weekend, I came back to the church and I said, look, we've done some figures, and it looks like we are real figures now, and it looks like we're about $15,000 short. So we've already raised $45,000. Isn't that amazing? Everybody's going, yeah. I said, okay, so we've got to raise $15,000. And we took up pledges that morning, and I think it was around about $22,000 that was pledged. Now, we didn't end up getting in the full $22,000. You know who you are. I don't. I have no idea. So it's okay. You can breathe easily, just look through. We got around about 18,000, I think, that actually ended up coming in. But we ended up doing the offices and completing the offices by November of that year. And they were absolutely beautiful. They were fantastic. So we got that happening, which was really great. And then the very next year we decided, okay, let's paint the outside of the building. Sally and Mike rolled on a white undercoat. And as you can see there, don't park your black car near where they're rolling on white paint. I still have white dots all over the front of my car. It looks good from a distance, but when you get up close, you realise my car's trashed, all right? So, and then the boys from Performance Painting came along and painted the outside. We decided we'd go green because we had a lot of gum trees at that time before we chopped them all down on the property. So it sort of fit in really nicely. It was much better than the dark grey brown colour that had been painted. And we also that year put up a sign. So 2019, we bought it in 2015, and finally we felt we could actually put up a sign saying that we actually owned the place and the place was no longer empty and abandoned. Then in February 2020, now it's interesting because 2020, do you remember what happened in 2020? COVID hit, right? Well, the year before that, we had put in a funding application with Tasmanian Community Fund because our toilets at the Grace Centre were pretty bad. Pretty bad. They had a large toilet in there with a paper sign on it saying disabled toilet, but the problem with our toilets at that stage, if you wanted to get into them and you're in a wheelchair, you're out of luck, because you have to get out of your wheelchair to get through the door into the toilets themselves. They were old pub toilets and they were totally non-compliant. The ramp leading up to our front door was too high for wheelchair access. It needed to be a lower ramp, and we had no disabled parking at the centre. So we put in an application for building works with Tasmanian Community Fund, and I think we got around about $235,000 from the Tas Community Fund. We spoke to a bunch of different builders, picked the cheapest one, who have done a number of jobs for us now. They've been absolutely terrific to work with. We got them signed up, and in the year of COVID, 2020, later on that year, we started around about, when was it? It would have been around about June or July, we started to redo the whole front entrance into the Grace Centre. So that was the toilets in February 2020, and in November of that year, that's what the men's toilets look like. So the ladies' toilets were much nicer than the men's toilets, by the way. No, we should have just left the ladies' toilets the way they were. They were beautiful. Although I did have somebody from council say to me, a lady from council said, you know, I always went to the toilet before I came to the Grace Centre, because there's no way I was going to use your toilets. And I was thinking, you haven't seen the men's toilets. The ladies' toilets are pristine compared to the boys. Anyway, it ended up costing us around about $240,000. This was the entrance into the men's toilets. We had one little door at the front that had bars across it. The roof was at the top of that picture, that's where the roof was. And then at the end, looking across to that new toilet block, new foyer area, new front door. I like the foyer so much I've done pictures from both sides. So this is looking into the ladies' toilets, and that's what it looks like today. We then had, at that point, let's move along on my slides here. And here was the outside. So that was the outside facade of the entranceway, which looked so much better than when we first... Remember, all the way along, we're trying to give our community something tangible that they can see. That we wanted them to see that something that was old and decrepit, something that was run down, could actually be changed into something that was beautiful, something that they could take some pride in. Because what I've noticed in life, if you're trying to bring about change in a community, obviously there is generational change that needs to take place, there is heart change that needs to take place. They're very, very difficult things to change. But the one thing that's really easy to change is the physical environment. And oftentimes when people see the physical environment changing around them, they start to get hope that maybe they can change as well. So we've tried to do, in everything that we've done at the Grace Centre, we've tried to do it as good a quality as we possibly can to let people know that they are worth it. Because as I said, it's our gift, right at the start, it's our gift to our community, and our community has been using this facility. And they have seen it go from a rundown old pub to something that is very, very attractive. Now, at that time, we had a launch for the toilets. We did a launch for the toilets, it was great, the toilets in front. And we had a number of people that came out for that. And one of them who wanted to be there but couldn't be there was the then Deputy Mayor of Clarence City Council, Heather Chong. Heather Chong has been active in our local community for a very, very long time. She actually lives in Richmond, but has done a huge amount of work for our local community. And I asked Heather if she would speak, and unfortunately she was going to be out of the state, but she said that she would record this message for us. Now I want you to listen to what she says about the Grace Centre, because it's one thing for a pastor in front of his church to say stuff about us. It's another thing when somebody outside in our local community says the exact same thing. So just watch the screen.
Hi, Heather Chong here. I'm sorry I can't be with you today. I'm in Melbourne for a board meeting and a strategic planning weekend, and trust me, I know where I'd sooner be. Dermot asked me to say a few words about the Great Centre and its transformation over the past 5 years. I can vividly remember going to the centre with Dermot early on in the piece and looking at it and going, wow, what a lot of work you've got ahead of you. In the 5 years since then, the transformation has been phenomenal. You took collectively as rather smelly and run-down building and turned it into a centre of hope for the Clarence Plains community. The dedication and love that has gone into this building cannot be underestimated. And on behalf of all the community, I would like to give you heartfelt thanks for this amazing gift. Take a few minutes, pat yourselves on the back, be amazed at all the work that you've done so far. Enjoy the celebratory barbecue and then start to plan what the next stage is going to be. Thank you again for all the work you've done at the Grey Centre. It is an amazing gift to the Clarence Plains community.
An amazing gift to the Clarence Plains community. Somebody who's not a Christian, doesn't go to church, but has been involved with us in this journey that we've been on, was saying that. What does that say? When people say that, what does that say about their impression of the Church of Jesus Christ? It says exactly what we want them to say. We want to be known as a gift to our community. We want people to realise that Jesus is a gift. We don't want them to see the church as a place that's always wanting to take from them. We want them to see the church as a blessing. Because that's what the church was meant to be. That's what the church is meant to be. Our next project, and I'll quickly just go through this, was the kitchen. The miracle of the kitchen. Remember, we were told it would cost us $200,000. We got a quote back for it. It was $550,000. I wanted to tell you about it right at the start so that you could suffer along with me as we saw God come through. But because of a number of different things that happened during that start of that year after we received the quote, I wasn't able to actually stand up in front of the church and say, we've got to raise an extra $350,000, we've only got $200,000. I wasn't able to stand up in front of you for 8 whole weeks because we had a whole heap of COVID that swept through the church. We had visiting speakers. I was away for 2 weeks sick at the time as well. And finally, 8 weeks after we received the quote, the increased quote for the new kitchen that we were wanting to build for Loaves and Fishes, I stood up in front of the church. You might, if you were here, you might remember that particular message. I didn't let you in on the fact that we'd raised it. I just sort of said, we've got to raise this. This is what's been happening. I could feel the mood in the place was just getting more and more sombre. And then at the very end of it, I turned around and I said, well, guess what? You know that $350,000 that we've got to raise? We've already raised it. It's already come in. Our church didn't have to contribute a single cent to a $550,000 renovation. God came through in an amazing way. But you know what? We were building something not for ourselves. You understand that? The kitchen. Well, we don't get any kudos for the kitchen. We don't get anything back from the kitchen. And the other kitchen that we ended up building out there for that big, large room, that's used by our community. We don't have church in that building, so we don't get to access those facilities all the time. Now, we do have meetings there at times, and we get to use the place. But the majority of the time, that building is being used by the community. Here's some pictures. So that was the old kitchen, and we totally demolished it. That silver thing that you can see there, that's the back of the big room. So it was all completely stripped out. You might remember we had a little small room off to the side of the old kitchen. That got knocked down, completely torn down, and then here we go, February 2023, Loaves and Fishes started cooking with their first trainees. 2,500 meals get cooked in that kitchen every single week. There are 6 trainees being trained up in food handling out of that kitchen. Didn't cost us a cent other than the provision of the space and the will to work with another organisation in our city. And there was the kitchen that we got. So we gave over our old kitchen and we now have this kitchen, which is absolutely amazing. So current tenants in the facility at the moment, we have Loaves and Fishes. They have a kitchen and office space. The CEO of Olive Road Tasmania is there. One Community Together project officer works out of our centre. Mission Australia Housing Chaplain works out of our centre. We have a hairdresser around the side. If you want to get haircuts, you can just come to the Grace Centre. And we also have a 2-bedroom accommodation block around the back. So part of the dream for the Grace Centre was that we would become a hub for our local community, a place where our community gathers, which is why we have the big room, but we also wanted to be a place where we were supporting community groups during the week to do what community groups are able to do, community organisations, and we already are well on the way, which brings us to stage 5. So we already have 4 stages in the development of the Grace Centre, which brings us to stage 5. Now, you may have seen in our foyer area, if you're going out to the offices, that there are 2 white doors. Now those white doors lead to the dungeon. Those 2 white doors there, they're always locked, so you probably have never been in there, but this is what they lead to. You open those 2 white doors, it takes you into the back end of our property, which currently is just as terrible as it was when we first moved in. Now, if you look down the corridor, we actually built a little kitchenette for our staff so that they could have tea and coffee if the other kitchen was being used by a community group or a hire. We built a little kitchenette there. Now, the right-hand side, this corridor that you see going down through there, that was where the old bar was. And the room to the back of that is this, the old it was the cool room for all of the grog. So that's where all the grog was stored, and now we've just got chairs and junk and other stuff that's stored in there at this point in time. And then at the front here... Oh, yeah. I was wondering if you'd pick that up. I was just saying, Nick's here, I'll just get stuff in. There is some really good stuff in there, actually. There's some gold in that room. In fact, those chairs that we have stored there, we bought them for around about $35, $40 each. They are now worth $189 each. Anyway, so that's that back room there. And to the side, over here, to the side here, we've got a little bit of storage in the middle area. What we're wanting to do, I'll just show you something. So I've put in a wall. What we're wanting to do in this next section, we've got a couple of issues. Number one is we've got an issue with what the building was created out of, or what was built out of. It was built out of EPS, which is that foam stuff that's sandwiched between tin. It is non-compliant, and so what happens for us every year is we have to spend a lot of money to insure our building. This year it cost us $20,000 to insure our building, and we are underinsured, because we've done all that extra building works in the property. If we didn't have any EPS in our building, it would be substantially cheaper to insure it. So what we've been doing is we've been doing the renovations, and we've been taking out a lot of the EPS along the way. But there's still a fair bit to go. That whole back section there is all constructed out of EPS. We need to change that. We need to rip that all out. What we're wanting to do is we're wanting to put in 3 extra community offices. Now I'll just show you. Okay, so we want to remove the EPS. We want to build 3 community offices. We want to, in that section just over here, we want to convert that into extra storage space, and we want to make a staff lunchroom off to the side of that little kitchenette that we've got up there. So we want to remove the EPS, build 3 community offices, bring more community organisations into the Grace Centre to help our local community. New storage area and a staff lunchroom. Now, I've got a plan here. So what happened was we went out to our architect and we asked him to draw up a plan that would show those offices, that new storage space, and also the removal of all of the EPS that's currently left in the building, which is that green section over there, but also the large meeting room. It's still got an EPS roof, it's got EPS in the walls around the outside. Well, we went out and we asked for a quote. To do all of that, to do the new building, to do everything, and they came back with $590,000 it was going to cost us to do all of that. Now I'm sure some people are sitting here and you're thinking, I can build a house for that much money. Well, you can't anymore. that housing is getting quite expensive. We've got to do a new build. But 590,000. So we went back to them and we asked the architect if they could split it so that we could go back to the builders and ask them for a new quote on just half of it. And we figured if we did the half that had the new offices, then that would create some income generating ability for us. So he's drawn the purple line straight down the middle. So what we're looking at now is everything on that side of the purple line. Now to do all of that, we sent that back to our builders and we asked them how much would this cost us, and the price they've come back to us with to do all of that off to the side is $360,000.
Does that include the actual building of the offices?
Yes, it includes everything. It includes the demolition and the removal of all the EPS, the building of the new offices, that corridor down to the offices, the new storage area to the side, because we'll lose storage area when we build those offices into what is currently the cool room area. So new storage in the middle. So it'll do that whole central back end of the building, and it will bring 3 new tenants into the Grace Centre. One of the goals that we've had all the way through with the Grace Centre, obviously we want it to become a hub for our community. We want it to be of service to the community, but we've also, in our minds, have worked very, very hard toward making the Grace Centre self-sustaining, so that it doesn't require Grace Tithe to go into keeping the Grace Centre going, which is why we do hires there as well for workshops, etc. And at the moment, the Grace Centre doesn't cost our church a cent. It's pretty darn good. Pretty darn good when you consider where we came from. So it's not costing us anything, and in the future, we want the Grace Centre to be totally self-funding, right? So whilst we're trying to reach the community, we also want to make sure that we can afford to do it. So we've been taking a fairly measured approach to this all the way along, and I think we've done exceptionally well to this stage. Now we've got to stretch again. 360,000. I mean, if somebody's got 590,000 sitting around the bank and they want to give it to us, that'd be fantastic. But we're looking at 360,000 that we have to raise. And I took you on the journey because I want you to realise something. Number one, you will not be whacked over the head ad nauseum to give us your money. We've never done that in the past. We've never had to. God's always seemed to come through in amazing ways. And that doesn't mean that we then can just wait for somebody else to do it for us. But I think what it does for us is it gives us confidence to step out and say, okay, here's the next step. This is the next stage. This is what I want to see have happen. I see that hand, Trish. Are you waving your hand around?
I want to ask. The original quote,
Yes?
590.
Yep.
Was that for whole completion of the whole Grace Centre?
Yeah. It gets rid of all of the EPS, does all the other stuff.
Wouldn't we better off just going the whole?
I'm glad you said that. Fantastic. Thank you. Trish is going to pay for the whole thing. No, well, listen. If we could, we stage things. So we've staged things.
What's that? Because,
Well,
I mean, as a community, God's going to look after us.
that's true.
You know what I
And
mean?
listen, if we were able to raise 590, I would go, we're doing it. Well, we might be able to. We don't know. We don't know. We might be able to.
Just go for it.
Yeah, we might be able to. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Okay. Just got to go. We're just doing it. All right. Yeah, that's good. But I'm glad you said that because I was going to say it, but now I don't have to. So 360,000 will get us that section done. 590 will get the whole thing done. At the moment, we can go to the bank. We can ask the bank for a loan. Now, whether the bank will actually give us a loan, because we're a not-for-profit, you know what that means? We don't make any profit. So you've got to be able to show the bank your... but it might be that some people have got some money sitting in the bank that they are gaining some interest from, and you might go, you know what, I wouldn't mind investing into the Grace Centre and I could give the church an interest-free loan. If that's the case, that would be fantastic. We will be asking people to give. So, Because one of the things that I feel very, very strongly about with regards to the Grace Centre is that the Grace Centre is far bigger than any of us. And the great thing about the Grace Centre is that we're not trying to feather our own nest. We're not trying to build something for the church. We're trying to build something for the local community. Which means in the eyes of God, when God sees us as a church taking our treasure and putting our treasure into something that blesses other people, God likes that. Jesus likes that. So I want us all to be part of this miracle. Now some people can have greater means, they've got more money. Other people don't have all that much. And we've always said all the way along, we don't care how much you give, but we do care that you're part of it. Because if you're part of it, then you are helping to create a legacy of good in our local community. And something that I want us all to be thinking about over these next few weeks, because we're going to have to come up with some sort of plan. Because when we spoke to the builders, they said to us that they have place on their calendar, they've got space on their calendar to begin work on this stage, stage 5 of the Grace Centre, late October. Guess what month it is now? September. So we've got to come up with a plan. We've got to come up with a plan to raise $360,000 so that we go to the builders and say, hey, it's all looked after, start to build it for us. Now, do I have any answer? Do I have a solution to that? No, not at this particular point in time. Do I feel confident that God does? And I'm not saying this, I mean, listen, I'll be 60 this year, right? The end of the year. I'm not just some new kid on the block who's just starting off with a lot of vision with no runs on the board. And our church is not some new church that's just been planted with a lot of vision and no runs on the board. We have seen the faithfulness of God over, well, how old is our church now? It was 1958. How many years does that make us?
About 66.
66, is that right?
Yeah.
66? We're 66? 76?
No, 66.
How old are we? I have no idea. Maths is not my strong point. All right, so we'll go 66? 66 years old. And we have seen the faithfulness of God all the way through. So when I say I don't know how we're going to do it, but I have confidence in my heart that we are able to do it, because we're starting where we are, we're using what we have and doing what we can. That's just not hype. That's just not wishful thinking. I have seen God come through over and over again. And the last project cost us $550,000, and it didn't cost any one of us a cent out of our pockets. Can God do it? Absolutely. Does God want us to be part of it? Absolutely. And I want you to just bring it before God and ask Him what it is that He wants you to do. So why do we do it? And I'm going to wrap it up this morning because we have gone over time, but we need to spend the time to look at this. Why do we do it? Because Jesus said, go into all the world. Go into all the world. How do you go into an Australian community? You do what we've been doing over the last 8 years. You buy an old pub that everybody's been to, that the community considers their building, and you fix it up, and you use it for them. And you build a relationship with them, and you serve them, and you love on them through winter, through spring, through summer, through autumn, through winter, through springs, through summer, through autumn, over and over and over again. I know when we first moved into that building, people looked at us with great suspicion. They no longer look at us with suspicion. They look at us as people who genuinely care for our local community. They were expecting us to hold church there. Some people still think that we hold church at the Grace Centre, and it gives me great joy to tell them that no, we don't. This is our gift to the local community. Last week I had two ladies meet at my office. They've been running this community consult right throughout the state of Tasmania, looking at various place-based works that are happening in local communities. Our community has one of the best place-based operations happening in our state. One Community Together. It is being held up as the poster child of place-based community development. Well, they came in and they had a meeting with me and one of the other executive members of One Community Together, and they wanted to just find out what was going on and what's been happening with One Community Together. And at the end of it, they asked if they could have a tour around our building. So I took them out the back. They were quite surprised. They knew all about loaves and fishes. I said, well, we are the Southern Kitchen. The Southern Kitchen is out the back of our facility. Took them out the back. They saw the back area of it and showed them the big meeting room. And they said, oh, this would be really great if we were to have a Southern meeting where we gather all of the community groups together. It'd be really good to have them in this building. And in the course of that conversation, I mentioned to them that we don't actually have church here, because I think they came up in the and they both looked at me, shocked, and said, "What? You don't have church here?" And I then said, "No, it's too small." No. I said, "No, we don't have church here. This is our gift to our local community." And they were stunned. And then they said, we definitely have to have a meeting in this place, because this is what community development is all about. I have those sorts of conversations with people from the community all the time. And I'm able to show them what we have accomplished, not for our benefit, but for their benefit. And I tell you what, it makes a huge difference. Why do we do what we do? Because Jesus said, go into all the world. Community engagement, engaging with your community, is how we go into all the world. And then when we're in the world, when we are connected with the world, then disciples are made. This was the awards night that we ran at the end of last year at the Grace Centre. We had a whole heap of Grace people in these pictures. You might see Pastor Gus up there. My wife's at the back there. Sally and Mike are in here. Anne is there as well. This is a meeting, an awards ceremony that happens every year in our community, and every year we host it. We hosted it initially here at this venue, and then we've been hosting it for the last 3 years over at the Grace Centre. Every single time we have the community awards, they ask me to MC. Every year that it comes around, I'm thinking they're going to choose somebody else to MC the awards, but they keep coming back to me to MC the awards, which I think is one of the highlights, for me personally, of my year. Getting to MC the community awards each year. And the only reason that they ask us to host it and to MC it, and for me to MC it, is because we have been engaging with our community in a real and authentic way for the last 8 years. Why do we do what we do? We do it for people. We do it to reach those who have never darkened the door of a church, but have been to the pub and do come to community activities that are based at the pub. And we have seen literally thousands of people through that facility. I have had hundreds of conversations with people about who we are and why we're doing what we do. And I have heard community members, not just Heather Chong, I have heard other community members talking about the Grace Centre and saying to other people that the Grace Centre is Grace Church's gift to their community. Jesus was the gift to the world. We're just kind of like following in his footsteps. Now, I have a couple of sentences that I would like to conclude with, and then we're going to pray. And I'm going to read this out because I don't want to miss it. This is the crux of it all for me. Why have we done what we've done over the last 8 years? Why are we on this path that we are currently walking on? It's what I wrote. Why have we made the sacrifices that we have? Why have we spent ourselves on behalf of our local community? Why have we literally put our money where our mouth is? Why aren't we interested in being seen or even known by the broader Christian community? I'll tell you why. Because the world isn't looking for a successful, conquering, powerful church. The world is looking for a church that looks like Jesus. A church that will love them authentically through presence and service. A church that will say to them that they are worth dying for. A church willing to sacrifice its treasure for them. Not in the building of places of worship for itself, but in the reaching out and caring for those that everyone forgets. A church that is willing to lay its own life down and follow Jesus wherever he leads us. To the poor, the broken, the refugee, those that the powerful have used and abused for their own profit and gain, to the forgotten and the overlooked. This is the love that overcomes the world. This is the love that our Saviour demonstrated when he left heaven and lived amongst the poor, the forgotten, the powerless and the weak. This is the love that saw him lay his life down for every person on the planet, not just for the Jews. This is the love that he's asking us to pursue and live out in the world around us. This is the love that we're committed to loving our community with. And as long as I'm the senior pastor of Grace, this is the road that we will be walking down. Because Jesus is worth it. And you are worth it. And our community is worth it.